All right, today we're tackling one of history's most explosive moments, the French Revolution. But we're going to look at it through a really different lens. We're going to investigate the silent, kind of invisible force that armed the revolutionaries, not with guns, but with something way, way more powerful: ideas. So let me just ask you this straight up. Could a book actually start a revolution? I mean, it seems a little far-fetched, right? Could ink on a page really be enough to bring down a monarchy that had been around for centuries? Well, that is exactly what we're going to dive into today.
So, 1789, the year the entire social and political world in France just completely shattered. But here's the thing, an explosion like that doesn't just happen out of nowhere. The groundwork was laid for years, even decades before. So, what was that unseen force that made it all possible?
The answer, as so many historians argue, is right there in the power of the printing press. You see, it wasn't just a machine for making books. It was the secret weapon that spread these radical new ideas, created this whole new culture of debate, and, at the end of the day, helped topple an entire system of rule. Let's dig in and see how. Okay, first things first. Before we even get to the revolution, we have to understand this massive cultural shift that was happening. Basically, Europe, and France in particular, went nuts for reading. They fell completely in love with it.
And I mean, the scale of this change was just staggering. Throughout the 17th and 18th centuries, literacy rates just skyrocketed. All of a sudden, you've got churches setting up village schools, and peasants and city workers were actually learning to read. I mean, think about that. By the end of the 18th century, some parts of Europe had literacy rates as high as 60, even 80%.
And this whole phenomenon created what historians call a reading mania. It was a total craze. Suddenly, it wasn't just the rich folks who were reading anymore. You had people from every single walk of life who were just hungry for books, for pamphlets, for newspapers. And you better believe printers were ready to meet that demand.
And reading just became so much more accessible. Like in England, you had these tiny, penny-sized chapbooks that were sold by traveling salesmen. And over in France, they had the famous Bibliothèque Bleue. These were super low-cost books with these really cheap, distinctive blue paper covers. And they had everything, from romance novels and folk tales to histories.
And this quote from a London publisher at the time just paints such a perfect picture. Just imagine it for a second. Farming families who maybe a generation before would have just sat around telling stories are now gathering around the fire to hear their own kids read adventure stories to them. I mean, the world was literally changing one page at a time. So, okay, we've established that people were reading more than ever before. But what they were reading? Well, that was a total game changer. Print became the superhighway for the radical new ideas of the Enlightenment. You know, the printing press took these huge, groundbreaking ideas from philosophers like Voltaire, Rousseau, and Thomas Paine and just blasted them out to a massive audience. Their writings, which used to be stuck in these tiny intellectual circles, were now in the hands of everyday people.
And their message? Whoa, it was revolutionary. They were basically saying, hey, use reason, not just tradition. They went after the absolute unchecked power of the church and the state, what they called despotism or tyranny. They told people to question everything, from why there's so much social inequality to why a king should have some kind of divine right to rule over them.
But here's where it gets really interesting. Print did more than just hand people new ideas. It actually created entirely new spaces for them to get together and talk about those ideas. So as more people are reading, they start gathering. They're meeting up in fancy salons, in these new trendy coffee houses, or even just out in public squares, reading things aloud and debating, well, everything. They're talking about laws, taxes, social problems. Absolutely nothing was off limits anymore. And this is the crucial point, right here. A new public sphere was born. Print didn't just create a literate population, it created a critically engaged one. People were becoming super aware of the injustices all around them, and they were starting to believe that maybe, just maybe, they had the power to change things. So naturally, this newly fired up public starts looking right at the top. And print becomes a weapon aimed squarely at the French monarchy itself. By the 1780s, so we're right on the doorstep of the revolution here, the whole tone of what's being printed shifts. It gets way more aggressive, way more pointed. What you see is just this absolute flood of pamphlets, cartoons, and satirical plays just relentlessly mocking the royalty.
This stuff portrayed the monarchy as wasteful, immoral, and completely out of touch with real people. And this constant barrage of criticism did something really profound. It completely destroyed that sacred, almost godlike respect people used to have for their king.
A French novelist at the time, Louis Sebastian Mercier, just captured this feeling perfectly. He saw the printing press as this unstoppable engine for progress. He basically declared that public opinion, shaped by writers, was going to sweep tyranny away. You could just feel the power in those words, can't you?
Okay, so let's pull all these threads together. You've got these big ideas, this new culture of debate, and this direct criticism of the king. How did it all combine to create the tipping point for a revolution?
Well, it was kind of a perfect storm. So, number one, print spread these powerful Enlightenment ideas that taught people to value reason over blind tradition. Number two, it created this whole new public culture of debate, which made everyone keenly aware of social injustice. And number three, it directly attacked and wore down the authority of the monarchy itself.
So, let's go back to that first question. Could a book start a revolution? Well, maybe not a single book on its own, but a whole culture of print? Absolutely. Print didn't light the fuse all by itself, but it for sure packed the powder keg full of explosive ideas. It created the intellectual and social environment that made the French Revolution not just possible, but maybe inevitable.
And that kind of leaves us with one last thought to chew on. If the printing press was the revolutionary engine of the 18th century, what's its equivalent today? What's the medium that's shaping our ideas, our debates, and how we view authority right now? It's something to think about.